We're going to speak about creation, the origin of man, and the fall in sin. We look at the order in which creation took place. The creation order, day one day. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. This word Elohim is very interesting because Elohim, when you break it down to its finest component, at the bottom you find a little word by the name of U, which means to twine as one does a rope. And as you know, you take many strands of sisal and twine them together by twining them in one direction very tightly, then putting 3 strands next to each other, and then they will spin across in the opposite direction, actually unburdening the twining. And that twining causes the twining of the 3 pieces of rope. And this twining is known to be incredibly powerful. Therefore, Elohim, at his very base, carries the meaning of twining. So why should he want to twine? It means that the reason for creation is that he wanted to twine. He wanted to twine with his bride, with man. The earth was unformed and void. Darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Ruach of Elohim hovered over the surface of the water. Then Elohim said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Elohim saw that the light was good, and Elohim divided the light from darkness. Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So there was evening and there was morning, one day. Creation was unformed and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. There were no lighting bodies. Creation was a void. Creation was dead. And there were waters. So the waters covered everything. So it's obvious that life in the way that it was to come about would not be sustained in its full extent, the way that creation came into being. Light, however, was not created. Elohim said, "Let it be." Yeshua was the creator in terms of John 1. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. And nothing came into being that did not come into being through him. And he also is declared light in the same portion in John 1. So we now have the 2 opposing forces here, spiritual light versus spiritual darkness. That means that the adversary is evil, that is darkness, that is thrown out into the physical dimension. And Yeshua as light neutralizes the darkness. It has to be separated from darkness for darkness to continue to exist. Because wherever light comes, darkness is destroyed. So Elohim separates between light and darkness, and he calls the darkness night, and he calls the light day. So there was evening and there was morning, one day. Now this one day is separate from what is mentioned in the rest of the book of Genesis chapter 1. The first day is literally one day in Hebrew. The rest of the days are the second, the third, the fourth, and so on. So this distinguishes the first day or the day from the rest. One day actually is an eternal day. It is an eternity. There's no time, no space. The eternity clearly is where Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh lives. It is the most holy because he lives within the most holy, where he appears in the heavenly realms as the Shekhinah on the Ark of the Covenant's lid. And the entire most holy is surrounded by a pattern. And this pattern is the pattern that is on the parquet, on the drape. It is blue, purple, red, and white. Air, water, fire, and earth. Those are the basic makeup of the earth. And the colors of the paraquet or the drape surround the most holy, because the paraquet was to be made out of one piece. And tradition has it that the high priest passed through the overlap between the two ends of the drape. This means that the paraquet surrounded the most holy completely. And this surrounded space actually is eternity. It is one day. It is separate, and this, in a certain manner of speaking, is the dome as well. It is the place of preparation. It is the tafnito pattern. It is where the planning and conception exists, and it does not have time or space. And then creation becomes the space, but there is no time. Therefore, one day. The order on the second day, Elohim said that let there be a dome in the middle of the water, let it divide the water from the water. Elohim made the dome and divided the water under the dome from the water above the dome. That is how it was. And Elohim called the dome sky. So there was evening and there was morning, a second day. Let us now examine what this division of the water that divided the water under the dome from the water above the dome. So we actually have a spiritual or an eternal that is separated from the physical creation. There is a spiritual dimension that rules creation and actually determines creation. It then determines the physical dimension. And day one rules over the other days, second day, third day, and so on. The spiritual realm rules over everything from the start, and these are separated in this dome. The water above the dome would be Ruach, because the water is an image of Ruach HaKodesh, and the waters under the dome are clouds and rain. They are the water on and under the earth. Elohim said, let the water under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let dry land appear. And that is how it was. Elohim called the dry land earth, the gathering together of the water he called seas. And Elohim saw that it was good. So we see the first thing that is created is light and darkness. And this is separated from each other. Once that is separated, that actually means that one can start speaking about how life is going to come about. But then the water under the sky is to be gathered together in one place and dry land appear. So what Elohim is doing here is he's actually separating dry land from the sea. And in that separation, he's creating a place where those animals can live that need dry land, the earth for earth plants and animals, and in a manner, by manner of speaking, also for the birds. And then there is water for the water plants and water animals. So, and then he says, let the earth bring forth plants, and the earth put forth grass, seed-producing plants, and fruit trees, each yielding its own kind of seed, bearing fruit on the earth. And that is how it was. The earth brought forth grass, plants, each yielding its own kind of seed, and trees, each producing its own kind of seed-bearing fruit. So in the absence of the light, because there are no light-giving bodies at this stage yet, Yeshua acts as their light. And actually, in Yeshua's light, photosynthesis seems to already be taking place. And Elohim saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning, a third day. The order of the fourth day. Elohim said that let there be lights in the dome of the sky. To divide the day from the night, let them be for signs, seasons, days, and years. And then let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light to the earth. So the lights in the dome of the sky are the stars and the sun. And the moon is merely a reflected type of light. But the lights of the stars are so far away that they cannot really give active light to the earth. But they, together with the sun, are there to give signs and seasons, days and years. And they are lights in the dome of the sky to give light to the earth. So they are there for the use of the spiritual dimension to communicate with the earth. And that is how it was. Elohim made the two great lights, the larger light to rule by day and the smaller light to rule the night and the stars. So the larger light rules the day when there is total light and when darkness is subdued, and the smaller light which actually waxes and wanes and allows more or less darkness, and the stars that are only visible when the light has been doused to a certain degree. And Elohim put them in the dome of the sky to give light to the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good. So there was evening and there was morning, a fourth day. So in its circle around the sun, it actually means that one side of the earth constantly is exposed to the light, which is Yeshua, and which also is the sun, whilst the other side is exposed to darkness. It is turned away from the light. And that part usually or often is exposed to the moon, which waxes and wanes as it rotates around the earth. So physical light was necessary for animals. As we know, it is difficult for most animals to move and to find food if there is no light. Then Elohim said on the fifth day, let the waters swarm and swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth in the open dome of the sky. Elohim created the great sea creatures and every living thing that creeps, so that the water swarmed with all kinds of them, and there was every kind of winged bird. And Elohim saw that it was good. Then Elohim blessed them and said, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the water of the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. So there was evening and there was morning, a fifth day. Water life and air life came about before ground animals and before man. And then on the fifth day, obviously, the animals were made first. And then Elohim said, let us make humankind in our image, in the likeness of ourselves, and let them rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, the animals, and over all the earth, and over every crawling creature that crawls on earth. So Elohim created humankind in his own image. In the image of Elohim, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Much is said about the fact that Elohim is actually a plural word. But the Shema says, Shema Israel, Yudhei Vavhei Eloheinu Yudhei Vavhei Echad, which says that Yudhei Vavhei is unique. So Elohim is absolutely one. There is no form of division between the expressions of Elohim. They are one. It is but one Elohim. So he rules over the fish, the sea, the birds in the air, the animals, and over everything. And he wishes humankind to do so in his image, because he created humankind in his own image. Male and female created he them. In his image created he them. So Elohim himself is male and female. Elohim gave man dominion in his image, ruling and caring as male and female. And there is no excuse for exploitation of the earth. Then Elohim as a female is caring. He is El Shaddai, the omnipotent one. Shaddai derived from Shad, which is breast, and obviously from the breast comes milk, which is continuous spiritual and physical caring for his universe. Male and female, therefore, are to care, to protect, to provide, and to love the universe within which they were created. Again, male and female created he them, in his image created he them. Elohim himself is male and female. How is he male? He's an initiator. He started off the universe in one day. He's the lawgiver. He's the leader. He's the provider. And he does this day by day and repetitive rather than continuous. Because for each day, a new provision. Each day he's the leader again. Each day he's the lawgiver again. And each day he's the initiator again. So the human male as male initiates. He provides sperm. He enforces the law. He's the leader. He's the provider. And this happens day by day and is not continuous. The human female also is to be a male because she also was created in his image. And she's to be a help against him. But clearly this is not meant to be a help against her husband. We will see what that alludes to later on in this presentation. Elohim as a female is caring, is El Shaddai. The Shad is a breast, and there's continuous and physical caring that is going on at all times. How are males female? They are female when they care, protect, provide, and nurture on a continuous basis rather than on a day-by-day basis. Because provision also is continuous, but it also is day by day. And the nurture is to be continuous along with his wife. How is a female female? She's female because she carries the baby. She feeds the young baby Engler. She nurtures the toddler. She teaches the child. And therefore, she has all these attributes. Now, when one says, how is Elohim female? There are some interesting things. One of his attributes is compassion, rachum in Hebrew. Interestingly, the uterus is rechem. And in the Hebrew of the scriptures, only the consonants are written, the vowels are not, which means that both compassion, base, and uterus are written resh chet mem. Resh chet mem. Shaddai, or Shad, is breasts, and the Ruach provides all the above. He provides compassion, he's a uterus, he's breasts. Let us just examine this a bit further, because the uterus is an amazing structure. It's an elastic bag. Within the elastic bag, there is fluid. And if external force is placed on an elastic bag, it simply will dent, but it will stretch to accommodate whatever is inside it by stretching in another direction and making space for the fetus to move into a protected situation, along with the fluid that is within it, which, according to Laplace's law, any force that is applied on the fluid is distributed equally within the entire container within which it is. So that means that the pressure, instead of being a localized pressure from one side on the fetus that can damage it, becomes a pressure that comes from all sides. And that, plus the elasticity of the uterus, protects the fetus incredibly within the uterus. So this is nothing other than compassion. And then there is Shaddai, Shad, the breasts, by which the newborn baby is fed until such time as it can be weaned off the breasts. And the Ruach provides all of this, plus the nurture that comes after this, plus the education that comes after this. So Elohim, in his total sense, is everything that is necessary to take us ahead. And then Elohim blessed them. Elohim said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, and every living creature that crawls on the earth. But so far, man has been created in his image, man and woman, male and female, he created them. But he has no shape or form to be seen. So that means that man also at this stage has no shape or form. Elohim rules according to his image, male and female, which is cherishing, caring, and controlling. Man must rule in Elohim's image, cherish, care, and control. What man controls and exploits. Then on the earth itself, then Elohim said, here, throughout the earth, I'm giving you as food every seed-bearing plant and every tree with seed-bearing fruit, which seems strange because man still is a spiritual being at this time. But Elohim is already providing for man, for when he is going to transform man into a physical entity, as he transformed everything in the universe from a spiritual entity into a physical entity. He rules over the earth and he cares for man, and there is no exploitation of the earth for man. And to every wild animal, bird in the air, and creature crawling on the earth in which there is a living soul, I'm giving as food every kind of green plant, and that is how it was. Elohim rules, he cares for the animal kingdom, and there is no exploitation of the kingdom for man. On the sixth day, he created man. Elohim saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good, and there was evening and there was a morning, the sixth day. So the number of man is 6. 3 times anything is making a statement of great emphasis. So 666 is a man developed to his full potential. That is the highest order of development that the human being can ever reach, will be 666, because it is the number of man with great emphasis. And the beast of Revelations is 666, but it clearly is without the Ruach. So Revelations 13, verse 16 to 18, also it forces everyone, beast, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or on his forehead, preventing anyone from buying or selling unless he has the mark, that is the name of the beast and the number of its name. This is where wisdom is needed. Those who understand should count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a person, and its number is 666, exactly to this whole entity that we've just been speaking about. But the mark on the right hand and the mark on the forehead is an interesting thing, because Scripture commands that it should be written on the hand and on the forehead. It says that in connection with celebrating the Passover feast, and also the remembrance that the firstborn was saved, because the firstborn are to be the children who will continue faith within the family. And then the second portion says, redeem your firstborn. But the firstborn of a donkey needs to be redeemed. And if it is not redeemed, its neck has to be broken. Interestingly, Esau was called a wild donkey. And when the neck of the animal is broken, it is removed from the body. It is broken away from the body. So this means that when a boy is not in a position to take the leadership of his family, because in the place of his father, he will actually have to be removed from that position. So his neck needs to be broken. And in a specific sense, this is exactly what happened to Esau. He was removed as head of Isaac's family, and in his place came Jacob. The same applies to Isaac. Isaac was put there in the place of Ishmael, who actually was the elder son. So these donkeys' necks were broken. And then one has to redeem the firstborn. So there is the redemption of the firstborn and the Passover that needs to be celebrated. Then the third text is written in Deuteronomy 6, where the Jewish confession of faith is, which is, Hear, O Israel, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is Elohim, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is one. And you must love him with your whole heart, your whole soul, and with all your possessions. And you must teach these things to your children when they sit and when they go, when they get up and when they lie down. So that actually commands that the laws need to be taught perpetually. And as the first two texts, it also commands that it is to be written on the forehead and on the hand. And the last text states that if there is to be idolatry, then rain will discontinue. And that in this discontinuation of the rain, this needs to be reminded to the children that they will know that idolatry will take them away from Hashem and cause them to serve something else. So of this, it means that the mark on the forehead and the mark on the arm is much the same as this mark, and the attribute that these people will have who take the mark of the beast is that they will not teach their children to serve Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohim and to do as he wants. And therefore, just the fact that these marks are in the same place means that they will not serve him and that they will not do as he wants them to do. And this is where wisdom is needed. So clearly, they will not be wearing the tefillin, the spiritual tefillin that they need to wear, and they will carry the number of the beast. The Sabbath, the physical, spiritual man, and the tree. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished along with everything in them. And on the seventh day Elohim was finished with his work which he had made. So he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. Elohim blessed the seventh day and separated it as holy, because on that day Elohim rested from all his work which he had created, so that it itself could produce. Elohim rests after creating. It is the seventh day, and he leaves it to continue on its own, so that it itself could produce. So his intervention ended, and creation matured, so-called out of his pocket. That means anyone who has children who are older, and where the children have left the situation where they're dependent on the physical support from their parents, they are out of the pocket. And at the same time, one leaves them so that they themselves can produce. So this is exactly what Elohim does. He rests after having created, because his creation is in a position that it can take care of itself. Here is the history of the heavens and the earth when they were created. On the day when Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohim made heaven and earth and heaven, there was yet no wild bush on the earth, no wild plant had yet sprung up, for Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohim had not caused it to rain on the earth, and there was no one to cultivate the ground. Rather, a mist went up from the earth, which watered the entire surface of the ground. Then Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohim formed a person, Hebrew Adam, from the dust of the ground, which is Adamah, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, so that he became a living being. Elohim makes physical man, Adam, which means ruddy, out of the dust of the red earth. And the red earth is known as Adamah. That actually is red earth. So Adam comes from Adamah, and blood is Dam, which also is red. And he had already created man spiritually. And now he made them physically. And Elohim places man's physical form into his physical form. He blows his breath or neshama into it, and the physical form becomes a living soul, or a nefesh chai. All animals have a nefesh. This nefesh lives because chai means lives. Elohim has put his neshama or his ruach into man, and that makes the nefesh alive. And John 17 says, and eternal life is this, to know you, the one true Elohim, and him whom you sent, Yeshua, the Messiah. Yudevave, Elohim planted a garden towards the east in Eden, and there he put the person whom he had formed. Out of the ground, Yudevave, Elohim caused to grow every tree pleasing in appearance and good for food, including the tree of life in the middle of the garden and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He places the man that he formed, first spiritually and then physically, in the garden. And there also is a tree in the middle of the garden. The tree of life is in the middle of the garden. And the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is also in the middle of the garden. So the question is whether it's the same tree. And whether the difference is, because these two trees actually are spiritual trees. They're metaphysical. They, by manner of speaking, are Elohim's interpretation via the Ruach versus satanic or human interpretation, which ends up in legalism. So Elohim ordained man to cultivate and to care for the garden, not to exploit it. And he said that you may not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. By implication, one may eat of the tree of life. As Adam lives, due to the Ruach that is in him, the silent voice. The silent voice, which is the Ruach, which is Yudevave himself, gives of the tree of life to eat so that man can live. Yudevave gave the person this order: you may freely eat from every tree in the garden except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You're not to eat of it, because on the day that you eat from it, it will become certain that you will die. Again, the issue of the silent voice and the other voice. Now let's study this tree a little bit further, because the tree of life is known to be the Torah, the Tanakh. Why? Because the Torah of the Ruach, which produces this life in union with Messiah Yeshua, has set me free from the Torah of sin and death. And the question is, what is the difference between these two Torahs? The Torah of sin and death is own or satanic interpretation of the scriptures, that is legalism. Whereas the Torah of the Spirit or the Ruach is the Ruach's interpretation. It is Elohim's interpretation of the scriptures. For what the Torah could not do by itself, because it lacked the power to make the old nature cooperate, Elohim did by sending his own Son. So the Torah by itself did not have the power to make the old nature cooperate, because it was just information. It was like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It is the perverted tree that comes when Satan interprets it for human beings instead of the Ruach HaKodesh doing so. Then Elohim did this by sending his own Son as a human being with a nature like our own, for one, but without sin. So clearly this could only be because Ruach HaKodesh fully rested on Yeshua, and therefore he sent his Son with that nature but without sin. And he did this in order to deal with sin, and in so doing, he executed the punishment against sin in human nature. So the execution of the punishment against sin actually means that in Yeshua's nature, he did not do sin. And for that reason, that was an execution of sin, so that the just requirement of the Torah might be fulfilled in us, who do not run our lives according to what our old nature wants, but according to what the Ruach wants, so that the just requirement of the Torah might be fulfilled in us, who don't do what our flesh wants, but what the Ruach wants. This means that it is the Ruach interpreting the requirements of the Torah and bringing us to fulfilling them in a contextual sense, as it is in Deuteronomy 6 in the Shema. And once more, we're at this, the Torah of sin and death, own or satanic interpretation of legalism, and the Torah of the Spirit, which is the Ruach and the Ruach's interpretation. Death occurs when one breaks trust with Elohim, when you listen to the other voice, because the other voice is Satan's interpretation. The life is Neshama, or Ruach HaKodesh, Elohim's interpretation. Elohim gave the person this order: you may freely eat from every tree in the garden, except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You're not to eat from it, because on the day that you eat from it, it will become certain that you will die. Elohim said, it isn't good that the person should be alone. I will make for him a companion suitable for helping him. In everything we've seen so far, we've seen that continually in creation, the one phase prepares for the next phase that is to come. And obviously, here there is the existence of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. And then Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh says it is not good that a person should be alone. So in the context of the tree, it is not good that the person should be alone. So the woman must be there to help him not to eat from the tree. I will make for him a companion suitable to him. So he makes woman in terms of the voices, and the two voices clearly are Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh and Satan. And then in this making, when one looks at the Hebrew, the woman is to be a help against Satan. That's because of female spirituality and sensitivity. Man is in Elohim's image. Not good for man to be alone. Not good for Elohim to be alone, so he creates his bride, his wife. He creates mankind. His bride is the woman, if the Ruach is there. Then Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall upon the person, and whilst he was sleeping, he took one of his ribs and closed up the place from which he took it with flesh. The rib which Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohim had taken from the person, he made a woman person, and he brought her to the man person. Woman was made of rib. Rib is part of the breathing mechanism. So that means that woman was meant to breathe the same way that males are to breathe. The Ruach is breath. And therefore man and woman share this ability to breathe the Ruach. Interestingly, that this is where she's made from the rib, from his side. John 19:35. However, one of the soldiers stabbed his side with a spear, and at once blood and water flowed out. Blood is Yeshua's life, because the life of an animal is in the blood, and the blood has been given to atone. That is written in Leviticus 17. The water that comes along with the blood is a symbol of Ruach HaKodesh. It is a sign of the bride who has been created. So the bride is created through the blood and the water. Yeshua's life, that is to be in her, and Ruach HaKodesh, that is to help her to breathe as he breathed. Interestingly, Moses, when he asks to say, see Yud-Heh-Vaveh, Yud-Heh-Vaveh says you cannot, but my face you cannot see, because a human being cannot look at me and remain alive. Here he said, is a place near me. Stand on the rock when my glory passes by. I will put you inside a crevice in the rock and cover you with my hand until I've passed by. Then I will remove my hand and you will see my back, but my face is not to be seen. So Moshe is put into the cleft in the rock. Yeshua is the rock. So the cleft in the rock is the cleft in Yeshua's side. So Moshe is actually guarded against the face of Yud-Heh-Vaveh by being put into the cleft in the rock. The man-person said at last, this is bone from my bones and flesh from my flesh. She is to be called woman, Hebrew Isha, because she is taken out of man, Hebrew Ish. This is why a man is to leave his father and mother and stick with his wife, and they are to be one flesh. Bone from my bones, she is also a person. Flesh of my flesh, she has the same basic nature as Adam. She can receive and can hear Ruach HaKodesh. Woman is Isha, or fire, female fire. Man is Ish, which is fire. They will burn each other when they are in the absence of the Ruach. But when the Ruach is there, they will burn together, and they will burn away their sin. They were both naked, the man and his wife, and they were not ashamed. They were naked, but they were clothed in the Shekhinah. Each was there for the other, not for money, for love, for property, for anything else. They were there for each other, not for themselves. And they were clothed in the Shekhinah. They were clothed in Elohim himself. Ephesians 5:22-26, wives should submit to their husbands as they do to the Lord, because the husband is head of the wife, just as the Messiah, as head of the Messianic community, is himself the one who keeps the body safe. Just as the Messianic community submits to the Messiah, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. As for husbands, love your wife, just as the Messiah loved the Messianic community, indeed gave himself up on its behalf, in order to set it apart for Elohim, making it clean through immersion in the mikveh, so to speak. This is popular to men, because women must submit. Just as the Messianic community submits to the Messiah, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. We like this, because women should submit. But then, as for husbands, love your wives, just as the Messiah loved the Messianic community, indeed gave himself up on its behalf in order to set it apart for Elohim, making it clean through immersion in the mikveh, so to speak. So men must love their wives as Mashiach, the body. He died for her, the body, his body, the body of Messiah. And husbands are to die to sin for their wives, as Yeshua died for the body's sin, and he's to teach her to die to sin, to assume accountability. Yeshua gives the Ruach, and he gives resurrection. Genesis 3 verse 2, now the serpent was more crafty than any wild animal which Yud-Heh-Vaveh had made. He said to the woman, did Elohim really say you are not to eat from any tree in the garden? The snake speaks. The woman's role is to submit to man. She should listen to him and to Elohim only. Now she's starting to speak to the snake, to Satan, and she activates the snare. The snare is that she knows Satan by speaking to him. The serpent says to the woman, is it It is not true that you will surely die, because Elohim knows that on the day you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. Satan says Elohim lies. You can interpret the tree yourself. Legalism will come about when you interpret it yourself. It will be for yourself. It will not be for Elohim. It will not be for your partner. And unwritten, Elohim himself would give of the tree out of his hand, his interpretation by Ruach HaKodesh. When she answers Satan, she intensifies her knowing of Satan. She should actually refuse to talk. She should not submit to Satan's opinion. Elohim's interpretation comes by the Ruach, gives life. Elohim gives the fruit. Satan's interpretation is legalism and death, and one takes the fruit. So men and women choose to take the fruit and eat everything for self, and that divides them one from the other. They heard the voice of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, Elohim, walking in the garden at the time of the evening breeze. So the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, Elohim, among the trees in the garden. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh walks and talks in the evening breeze. The Hebrew for the evening breeze is Ruach Yom. Ruach is spirit, wind, breeze. Yom is evening, day, era, or even continuous. So what actually can also be written here is that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh comes to walk with Adam continuously in the Ruach, and the word walk in Hebrew is halach, and that is living one's faith. So Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh actually came to halach with Adam continuously in the Ruach so that he would be able to live his faith. And Elohim called to the man, "Where are you?" He answered, "I heard your voice in the garden. I was afraid because I'm naked and I hid myself." Elohim looks for Adam and he's naked. He was previously clothed in the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah and the Ruach withdraw, and therefore he's not naked. So Elohim knows that what had happened, because that is only possible after eating of the tree, breaking the relationship with Elohim and also breaking the relationship with Eve, because now it is about himself. And the minute one eats of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it is about yourself and not about Elohim or others anymore. What could Adam conceivably have done to turn this around? He could have done as Moshe. He could have asked, "Do not kill them, kill me." And Adam could also say, "Attribute her mistake on me," as the second Adam did, as Yeshua did. The result would have been shalom. Yeshua brings through shalom and reverses the fall in sin. And to reverse the fall in sin is to die to sin and to accept accountability for sin, to be resolute to change. And this resolution to change cannot be borne through if Ruach HaKodesh does not bring it about in one, so that one can repair relationships and step in for Eve. He said, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I ordered you not to eat?" The man replied, "The woman you gave to be with me, she gave me fruit from the tree, and I ate." So having eaten and having lost the Shekhinah, immediately Adam starts blaming someone else. That is Eve. Says it is she. And immediately this is about him. It's not me. It's not about her. So no longer is she the reason that he is with her, but he is the reason. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, Elohim said to the woman, "What is that you have done?" The woman answered, "The serpent tricked me, so I ate." Eve said, "It is the snake, not I. it is about her, and not, she should have said, I have eaten. Full stop, period. And she should have taken accountability for what she did. So it is the snake. Satan deceived her, so she gave to Adam. She didn't say she ate and she's accountable, and she gave to Adam. The conclusion is that it was about her standing with God and not about Adam's.